Welcome to the September 7th, 2021, 10 a.m. meeting of the Johnston County Board of Commissioners. I now call the meeting to order. As customary, we say the prayer and stand for the pledge. I'm going to call on Mr. Godwin for the prayer. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father God, we're thankful for the blessings of this day. And as we come together to be about the county's business, Lord, we ask for your blessings, for your guidance, for your strength. We thank you, Lord, that this people can get together and through discourse, discussion, come to good solutions. Guide us and direct us, for it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to come over and face the flag. Present home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, home.
Thank you to VFW Post 5886 for leading us in the pledge. All right, first on the agenda is approval and discussion of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I understood the minutes were not being approved.
That's a consent agenda, I think.
What's our next
Okay,
item?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right, we got a motion. We got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on the agenda is consent agenda items. Staff request the board to approve the consent agenda, removing the August 2nd, 2021, 6 p.m. minutes. They will be submitted for approval at the September 20th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is our COVID-19 and Emergency Rental Assistance Program updates. First, I'd like to call on our Health Director, Dr. Pearson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope everybody had a good, safe, and healthy Labor Day. So I just wanted to give you an update, and I provided a flyer with some information for you. Like you said, it has some large print. I need large print also. It's just not the way it used to be. But I wanted to provide you this information today to let you know what's happening pretty much in our county, that this pandemic is still raging. We're still seeing lots of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. So as of this morning, we were at 28,115 cases. We're averaging around 1,100 cases a week. Over the weekend, I did have staff working yesterday. They got over 300 that came in over the weekend. Hospitalization-wise, we're at 72. And many people have been asking, well, how many are vaccinated? I wanted to provide that for you. 6 of those have been vaccinated. We have 62 of those at Johnston Health. We've had 280 deaths total, 10 in the last 7 days, 32 this past month related to COVID. We had 8 of those deaths at Johnston Health this past week. Reinfection-wise, we've had 152. That's about 0.5% of our total cases, and 420 breakthrough cases. Those are cases that are positive after getting vaccination. That's a 1.5% of our total cases at this point. So when we're looking at, our recommendations, I always make recommendations for the health and safety of all the people of Johnston County. That is my job. So I'm looking at community transmission indicators. Those are the things that are over there on the right, the case rate, and that's per 100,000. We're at over 540 at this point. Our goal is to get that under 10. Our positivity rate at this point, number of tests coming back positive that are performed is at 15%. Last week we were at 17%, so it's gone down. That could be that, we had testing sites closed yesterday and not as many people getting tested because of the holiday, but we're looking at it as a positive sign. The goal is to get that under 5%. And just to give you an idea of where we were, 1st of July we were under 5%. We were at 4.5% with that positivity rate. The highest we've been is 19.6, and that was in the December-January time frame, to give you an idea of what's been happening. Our vaccine rate, we're at 42% of our total population that's fully vaccinated. When you look at those that are 12 and over, that's at 48%. That's the eligible population. For our hospital system, I spoke with Tom this morning. They're at capacity, essentially 199 beds, but they have 4 additional beds, waiver beds, that they have opened up. All of those beds are essentially full. They've suspended non-emergent cases, surgical cases. Those are orthopedic joint replacement type surgeries and urology surgeries, those type of things. So our hospital is pretty much over capacity at this point. We are responding to 8 outbreaks, and that is 2 or more cases at a congregate living setting or shared living setting, so correctional facilities and our long-term care facilities or nursing homes. And we have 3 clusters, and those are 5 or more cases in other settings that are linked together. So we have 3 of those that we're addressing right now. So the things that we're trying to encourage people to do, as I continue to say, is get vaccinated. That's what's going to help us get back to doing some of those things that we really want to do and have some normal activities, and wearing our face coverings, particularly in indoor spaces or in crowded areas. We still have testing at our Smithfield Progressive Men's Club that is in partnership with the state and OptumServe. That is free testing. They usually do rapid and PCR. Right now, they're out of rapid tests, so I wanted to let everybody know that. They only have PCRs available right now. Vaccine-wise, many of our pharmacies are providing vaccines. Many of our medical providers, we provide vaccine Monday through Friday. And again, we offer all 3 vaccines that are approved by the FDA. So we continue to encourage everybody to try to get vaccinated. There is an additional dose of Pfizer and Moderna that has been approved, and that's for those who are immunocompromised. So that is approved for those, for example, who are on immunosuppressive medications, chemotherapy, have had transplants, those type of things. The booster dose is not yet approved. So I wanted to be sure everybody understood that. That is not yet approved. The FDA, CDC, all of them are reviewing that data right now. They think that at the end of September, there may be a booster dose approved. Now there are questions about whether it will be approved 6 months or 8 months out, and whether Pfizer will be approved and Moderna at the same time, et cetera. So there's still lots of questions. And so we're all talking and planning. We will be meeting with our partners this afternoon to plan for booster doses. Monoclonal antibodies are also available if you test positive, and you may be eligible to receive those. We've been trying to get that information out. Those have been shown to decrease hospitalizations, severe illness, and hospitalizations and death. So UNC is providing some monoclonal antibodies right now at the Clayton, one of their Clayton sites. We have additional sites coming up this week. We are actually working with the federal government and the state to have a site actually in our parking lot. So we're working with them. We also hope to have a site in Benson. Again, this is also that we can provide some treatment and decrease severe illness, deaths, and hospitalizations. That is my report for today.
The last part you spoke on, the antibodies, is that what they refer to as infusion or whatnot?
That's correct. Infusion therapies. The sites that will be in our parking lot and at Benson, it will be a sub-Q injection, not an infusion or IV.
Not an IV?
Not at those sites.
Okay.
The hospital sites are providing in the IV infusion.
Is there an advantage?
The IV infusion is more effective. It is more effective. But the sub-Q is at least 50-60% or so effective. So all of it helps. Those who are at higher risk will likely be referred to the infusion center.
So if you have tested positive and or you think that you have the virus and you're extremely ill and you go to one of these sites, they will give you a test before they give you this antibody, right?
They need a positive
And if it
test.
don't test positive on site, then you don't get it even though you feel horrible or whatnot.
You need to have a positive test.
Right before it's taken, you can't bring any, you can't have a positive test 3 or 4 days beforehand.
You can. There is a time period.
Okay.
There is a time period. So if you test positive today, for example, and decide you don't want today, but in a couple of days you think you may want to, you can contact this number or one of the other facilities to see if there's some availability for infusion or sub-Q.
Okay.
Dr. Pearson, do you know, or maybe I should direct this question to the hospital, are they still on diversion at Johnston Medical?
I'm not sure about that. I know that last week, you're right, and maybe Josh can answer that question, Josh or Kevin. But I know that last week they were trying to divert as much as they could.
They're shaking their
within the
head
hospital.
positive back there, so.
Yeah, because they have transferred out ICU cases that were in the ER, because they're still holding ICU patients in the ED. So they don't have much ED capacity at this point because they have them there, which is why they don't have capacity to bring people in.
And I guess well, he's shaking his head, but I'll address the question to you. I guess that's both hospitals?
That's right.
If
Dr.
all the other
Pearson.
hospitals are on diversion as well, then it kind of negates in other words, if all the Wake County hospitals and the surroundings are on diversion, then everybody's got to just take patients because you can't divert to nowhere.
Yep.
So that's one of the things. Dr. Pearson, I did have a question about the booster vaccine or the second. Is there a recommended time frame if someone has received the first and second? Then do we have any data to show how long that lasts before you would recommend having the additional?
And that's the data that they're reviewing right now.
Okay.
Initially, a few weeks ago, they were saying at about 8 months is where you probably needed to get a booster. Now they're looking at that data and saying it may be at 6 months. So that's what we're all waiting to hear. I can tell you there's a big difference in who will be eligible at 6 months versus 8 months for us. They sent me data last week. If they say it's 8 months, it's only about 2,700 people that might be eligible. If it's that 6 month period, it could be up to 27,000 in our county that may be eligible.
Do you visualize that being something that every 6 months, going down the road, that's going to happen, that you'll have to go back every 6 months and have that?
I think we all think it's going to be endemic like the flu eventually.
Okay.
And eventually we will need to continue to get vaccinated.
Okay.
We're hoping that someone will come up with flu, COVID vaccine that's all in one.
That'd be nice.
Be helpful.
You should invent that.
Dr. Pearson, their positivity rate at 15% now. How does the volume of testing now compare to the volume in July?
The volume in now is higher. We were probably at about 3,000, 3,000 to 4,000 a week. Now it's at between 5,000 and 6,000. But I can tell you that this positivity rate is based on number of tests that are submitted to the state. We have some places that are doing rapids, et cetera, that are not submitted.
Right.
So it's really an estimate at this point of the number of tests that are
In
positive.
any event, it's a stark contrast.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
A couple questions on the hospitalization. Out of the 72, are all these JOCO citizens, or did we kind of get behind the 8 ball as far as accepting patients and not diverting out-of-county patients, or?
We only report on Johnston County.
Okay.
So our hospital, they do have some COVID patients that are out of county. As you can see, we have 72 hospitalizations. As I said, 62 of our Johnston County residents are at Johnston Health. The other 10 are at other hospitals.
Okay. And as far as I see, you got on here, 6 of these patients are vaccinated. And I've been kind of curious about digging into some of these numbers with some of the mandates or questions we have. Is there any way I can get their age and other medical
Yes.
related, like weight, age?
That's information we do have.
Okay.
So we can provide ages of our hospitalization.
Okay, just to, because we get so many questions, we get so many different answers. It's kind of confusing sometimes, and as far as the antibodies, I see here you have, if you are eligible, what mandates you to be eligible?
Age 12 and up, BMI, body mass index. So,
Could you explain that?
yes, height versus weight. So if you're obese,
how does that?
Obesity, you're at higher risk to have severe illness with COVID. So they look at that risk factor. Okay.
Just let me dig into that just a little bit. So somebody that's at an active weight that is a healthy weight, they would be less eligible to receive the antibodies?
It depends on what the BMI is. So that body mass index, but I can tell you that they have lowered that eligibility to about 25, 27. So that's almost all of us. I qualify.
So I guess it would have been easier for me to say what would make you not
Right.
eligible.
Right. So almost everybody will qualify based on that. Age is another factor. And then, of course, they look at chronic diseases, some other illnesses that may cause you to have more comorbidities and more risk. The other thing is it depends on supply. So we have to think about that. You know, if we have an unlimited supply, we can do anybody who comes in. But if we don't, we have to look at the higher risk patients.
So I guess the hospitalization, that BMI and all these factors are a high risk for being hospitalized if you get COVID.
Yes, yes. And when we look at the hospitalizations, many of those who are hospitalized have comorbid conditions like diabetes, heart disease, those types of things.
High blood.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it just with, with the school stuff, with the, Walmart being open, small businesses being closed, just with the history of what has taken place over the last year or so. I mean, I think it helps to nail down some of the issues that are very relevant versus some that ain't as relevant. I mean, I know we're dealing with something that's way beyond my understanding, but the more numbers I can get, the more data I can get, the better I can, make decisions.
Well, I can tell you that's what the community transmission indicators are what we look at as a public health director. That's what I look at. Those are things that tell me that we're still at a pandemic stage, that we need to be doing the things that we're doing, all of these different mitigation measures. Nothing is going to make COVID go away. There's no one thing that's going to make it go away. But if we vaccinate, if we wear our face coverings, if we try to physically distance as much as we can, if we wash our hands, if we test early, all these different things add up to help us get to a point where it will be more endemic, like the flu, than what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, but just like the toolkit for the schools, I mean, you're not wearing a face mask is just a minute part of it. I mean, you got to have the cleaning, you got to have the separation. I mean, it's a toolkit. It's not just one tool. But when people call, email, you bump into them in the grocery store, I mean, they got questions like, well, so we can play football, but we can't go. I mean, it's just never ending, I mean, I'm surprised somebody ain't sent their kid to school in a football helmet. I mean, I'm not making a light of this, but it's just, I mean, it's 2 weeks to stop the spread. I mean, we're going on 2 years, and it's just, I mean, some of it seems like, I mean, it's got to where it's almost like crying wolf. What are we going to do? I mean, where did the flu go?
Well, I think if you look at last year, the flu, we didn't see much flu because of what we were doing because of COVID. We had no deaths in Johnston County. I think the state had 80-something when they usually have 300, 400 or so. When you look at the U.S., usually you have 60,000 flu deaths a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where the flu went. And if we keep doing the things we're doing, we're probably not going to see much flu again.
That's fair.
So the things that we're doing, it's a respiratory illness. It helps to keep us from transmitting a respiratory illness.
Yeah. And I hate to
No,
keep
no.
saying this,
I
but
think
it's
we all-
every day.
Yeah, I think we all have angst. We
Oh,
all
yeah,
have angst
yeah.
about this.
Well, Commissioner, are you advocating, you're not advocating not any of these recommendations that she just said, are you?
I advocate going by the Constitution on everything, whether it be judicials making rules. I mean, I advocate going by the Constitution.
Well, yeah, she has a job to do.
Oh, no doubt, no
Yeah,
doubt.
as a
And she
public-
has
She's still-
legislative authority to mandate quarantines. I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand all that.
Well, she's took a lot of hit in social media.
Oh,
First off, she was the evil one that mandated masks in school, which is nowhere near
We
close.
know that ain't true. We know that ain't true.
Oh, yeah, I know it's true, but most people don't know it's not true. But
Well, yeah, but explain this to me. Why does a 3-year-old have to wear a mask up until they eat lunch? And then when they eat lunch, they can take it off. Or a 16-year-old can stand across the line from somebody snarling at them on a football game and don't have to wear a mask. Or you
I
could,
guess the way I see it is, I guess, as she said, none of it's foolproof and nobody's expected to do all of it. But every little bit you can do when you can do it has got to be a help. So if you're in a group in a large crowd, naturally you've got to take your mask off to eat. But try to wear it as much as possible. Try to social distance. Try not to be in a large crowd. Just try to do as best we can with the tools you referred to.
Yeah.
And the more people on a global scale that try to do as much of that as they can has got to make a difference. And I know what you're saying, some of it don't make sense, but just try a little bit of all of it. And let's get these numbers down.
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. Thank you.
Nothing else? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bam.
Dr. P.
Next, we've got the ERA program update from Finance Director, Mr. McLean.
Good morning. I'm going to give you an update about two programs we have. I'm going to touch first on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and let you know about 3 to 4 months ago we allocated these funds for emergency rental assistance. And we started it in-house and quickly realized after a little while that we didn't have the staff or manpower to do that. So I'm going to give you the numbers that we've put out so far, and then I'll tell you what we've done now in a program we've started today. So far for emergency rental assistance, we put out $1,679,574 for emergency rental assistance for Johnstonians. We have processed and approved 630 applications, and that's been in the last few months. Now, we realized quickly that in order to be efficient and effective at getting as much money as we could out to citizens, we needed help, and through staff, Rick and staff, and then, of course, your approval, we have contracted with a company named Yardy that they're officially rolling out their program today. Will be available to all Johnstonians that qualify for this assistance. And we urge all Johnstonians that need help, tenants and landlords that need help with rent payments, that are behind in rent payments or utility payments, to contact Yardy at www.rentrelief.com/Johnston County. And if they need help by phone, they can call 833-243-7801 Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And Adam is putting out press releases, and we're going to be out in social media, in print media, throughout the month of September to let our citizens know what we have going on. And Yardy will be able to assist them and get those rent payments caught up, those utility payments caught up, to help our citizens. That is a program. We have almost $12 million. The first two buckets right now, we have almost $12 million left to be able to send out. And so we're urging citizens that need those types of helps, whether it be landlords or tenants, to call or go to that website and get relief. The other, and that I want to stress, is for rent and it's for utilities. We have another program through the Community Development Block Grant that we're going to administer in-house. So far, through the City of BG, we've administered $363,976. Those funds are limited. We have around $900,000 that's available. We will administer those through DSS, through paper applications. We're calling DSS at 919-989-5300, and those are for mortgage assistance. That's mortgage. Yardy does not do mortgage assistance. And so through DSS and then our staff in finance, we will continue to process mortgage assistance payments. And so far, we've given out that $363,000. We've also processed 265 applications so far. So we're looking for more, to give more of those funds out as well. And I really want to say a special thanks to DSS staff for their continued hard work in this. Christy Wall, Sarah Gaylor, my internal audit team, Martha Lassiter, my debt and grant manager, they have been saints the last 3 or 4 months getting this money out. Our Johnstonians would not have been helped had it not been for DSS and those 3 ladies. They have worked extra, they've worked overtime, they've taken it to heart. And now finally today, with this new program that's going to be started today, and will be much needed through Yardy, and I want to thank you guys again. Our citizens will be helped a lot better now. It will be more efficient, money will get out faster, and we can get people back on their feet. And I'll be happy to answer any
Chad,
questions.
those 600-plus applications that you process on rental assistance, is that renters and/or landlords, or one or the other?
Well, the CDBG, well, it's renters and landlord, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's also utility.
Right.
All right, Chad, when you said qualifies, is there a quick flyby that gives qualifications for?
There are some income levels there that if you call Yardy or you go on the website to do the application online, it spells it out fairly quickly. Whether you're, and I think the qualifications are set fairly low, or fairly, I think a lot of people would qualify.
Yeah, just for clarification too, if you wouldn't mind to explain where these funds came from, that they're not local tax dollars.
Yeah, the ERA funds are federal funds that come from the federal government. We have 4 buckets total, but what we contracted with through Yardy is the first 2 buckets. One is through federal funds. One is state funds administered once we spend a certain amount of federal funds. So basically, all these are federal funds. One is administered through federal program, the other one through the state. Now, the CDBG is federally funded, but it comes through the state, and it's administered by the state, so we have to make reports to the state with CDBG.
And the Yardy program will be paid for out of these funds.
Yes, sir. We're allowed to use a portion of the funds available through the federal program to pay for Yardy's expenses.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions or comments?
We intend to give monthly updates to the board and let you all know and let our citizens know how it's going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone that you mentioned for the hard work.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is public comments. I think first we have got Emergency Service Director Kevin Hubbard. Kevin with us. He'd like to recognize our fire marshal.
Good morning.
Y'all look mighty sharp this morning.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank y'all so much for the opportunity to be here this morning. I'd first like to introduce who I've got with me, if you don't mind, real quick. I've got our Deputy Director, Mr. Josh Holloman, our County Fire Marshal, Adam Stanley, and his wife, Shannon, who's with us this morning. And we'd like to take this opportunity to recognize one of our own, Mr. Adam Stanley, our County Fire Marshal, was recently recognized by the North Carolina Society of Fire and Rescue Instructors as the 2021 Instructor of the Year. Adam teaches a lot. He teaches across the state of North Carolina. He teaches locally here in Johnston County. He teaches fire investigations training, fire officer 1, 2, and 3, fire inspections, and many other classes, again, in our county and throughout the state. We're blessed here in Johnston County to have somebody like Adam and his expertise here to serve as our fire marshal. And we just like to take this opportunity to recognize him in front of you and our citizens. So thank y'all very much.
Well, thank you. Let's hear it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And oftentimes, the emergency services have been doing this a long time, and oftentimes we don't do it for accolades or a pat on the back. But sometimes it is nice to finally receive a pat on the back. So I really appreciate it. And without supporting the commissioners, county manager, our team, and my family, my wife, I couldn't do what I do. But it's all to make it better for the citizens, and that's the whole idea: is make it better leave it better than we found it. So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, we appreciate what you do for our county, and congratulations. I know your family and your colleagues are proud, as we are. And would y'all like to come up and let's get a get a picture?
Yes, sir, we'd love to, if you don't mind.
Adam, I'd like to say, I appreciate you being willing to share your knowledge and expertise. You've always been a leader in the fire service and emergency response, and we appreciate you. We're glad to have you in Johnston County, and I want to thank your wife, because it's just as big a commitment on her part to be in public safety as it is yours. And so without a supporting family, it's very difficult to do. So thank you both for your contribution to the safety and the betterment of the citizens, not only Johnston County, but North Carolina and all around. So thank you. Well done.
I appreciate it. It is. She bears a lot of the brunt of the load for sure. Not just me, but the kids.
Hey, do you get credit there? Talk on the phone for me for 30 minutes to give me training.
We can work on that.
All
right, you ready? 3, 2, 1.
Thought you may have said, smile.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry about that picture.
You can't Photoshop that out of it.
Probably all 7 of us out.
Again, congratulations, and thank y'all so much for everything you do for the county. All right, as you know, public comment is time for anyone in the audience who would like to address this board on something that is not on the agenda for 3 minutes, are more than welcome to do so. Do we have anyone that would like to address this board for 3 minutes on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, if not, any emails, clerk?
No, sir.
Okay, no emails. All right, next on the agenda is emergency services. Resolution for Firefighters Week in Johnston County. Well, that's mighty appropriate and fitting. We'll call on Fire Marshal Adam Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, thank you. This is an important time of the year for us in emergency services as a whole. And 20 years ago, this Saturday will be the day that the United States was struck very heavily on our hearts, souls, minds, and bodies. And as a board, you've always proved this week to be the resolution proclaiming Firefighters Week in Johnston County. So it's not really, to me, it's not just Firefighters Week. It's also it's our partners in protection, as we like to say in emergency services. So which begins with our 911 staff, our police officers, our EMS workers, and our firefighters. And then you can all go into the school teachers, to the hospital workers. It takes a team to do what we do across the United States, and we couldn't do it without none of us. And especially here in Johnston County with our volunteers, we rely heavily on our volunteer firefighters. And as a whole, we have nearly 800 firefighters across Johnston County that help protect our county. And still about 85% of those are still all volunteer, which in other words, they leave their families, they leave their homes, whether it's Christmas Day or birthdays, they leave to go help those in need. And it's still important that we recognize those who still do that. And it's getting harder and harder to attract volunteers as well, because the family demands are getting huge compared to what it used to be. So it's important that we still recognize those men and women who still help us, and it saves the citizens a ton of money. And people don't do it for the money; they do it because they want to help folks, and that's the reason what emergency services is truly all about, is helping those in need. So, if you don't mind, I would like to read the resolution.
Absolutely.
So, whereas fighting fires is one of the most hazardous professions, requiring physical strength, stamina, extensive training, courage, and selfless concern for welfare of others. And whereas firefighters provide valuable service to the citizens of Johnston County, their communities, and the county. And whereas firefighters make sacrifices to protect the lives and financial interests of the citizens of Johnston County. And whereas firefighters respond to emergencies without hesitation when the call of duty arises. Whereas firefighters work with the public safety officials, law enforcement officers, to protect the integrity of crime scenes, which is necessary to resolve arson cases. And whereas firefighters reside in the community in which they serve and have a great appreciation for protecting their communities. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the duties and services that firefighters perform, observing Firefighter Week in Johnston County. Now, therefore, it be resolved by Johnston County Board of Commissioners that all firefighters deserve to be honored for the invaluable service they provide to the county, its citizens, and communities. The Board of Commissioners encourages the citizens of Johnston County to observe the week of September 5th through the 11th, 2021 as Firefighter Week in Johnston County.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution as presented by the Fire Marshal.
I second.
We got a motion, we got a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all.
We're recognizing Firefighter Week.
Appreciate it.
All right, next on the agenda would be Piedmont Natural Gas Project Agreement. I think we had a conflict with, you going to still address? Okay,
Yes,
Counselor, we'll call on Ms. Lusher.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you this morning to present a commercial project agreement between Piedmont Natural Gas and Johnston County for the extension of an 8-inch natural gas line to 4 Oaks Middle School. You may recall you approved the appropriation for this project when you approved the budget in June, and then we went through the process of negotiating the agreement with Piedmont Natural Gas, and that is what you have before you for your consideration. Just a little bit of information about the project. It's a 14,450-foot, 8-foot natural gas line, and the proposed installation cost of this gas line is $2.7 million. The aid in appropriation that you have agreed to do is $1.337,446 of this project, so you're only funding a portion of the project. This money will be paid upon execution of the agreement to Piedmont Natural Gas, and those funds will be applied towards the project. Of course, if the project comes in under that 2.785 budget that was presented, there's not going to be a refund of any of the money that we pay towards that. Additionally, if the project cost is over the $2.7 million, we won't pay any more than the 1.3 and some change that we've talked about. So your cost in this project is set. It will not change. And with that, I recommend on behalf of staff that you approve this agreement. I think the schools have approved an agreement for the connections and the ongoing costs that would be part of this, but this has certainly been a collaborative effort between Piedmont, Johnston County Public Schools, and the Johnston County Board of Commissioners to get to this point. Unfortunately, Marcus Thompson could not be with us this morning from Piedmont Natural Gas, and he sends his regrets for not being able to be with you this morning, but certainly Mr. Hester and I are here to answer any questions that you might have about the project.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve this.
I second.
Got a motion, got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is budget revisions. We're going to call again on Finance Director, Mr. McClam.
Good morning. Finance has 3 budget revisions for you today. One from fiscal year 2021, as we're closing up the last fiscal year, and then 2 for the new year. The $4.1 million is motor vehicle taxes we collected in excess of what we budgeted, not only for the county, but for our fire districts and our towns. So we're cleaning that up to make sure that we get the budget to match what we actually collected.
The thing about motor vehicle taxes, is that a net corrected, or is that the difference in what we budgeted at one time?
The difference from what we budgeted and we actually collected.
Wow.
And this is out of Fund 55, so as we collect this money, we collect it, then we turn it over to the town, so we have to, so it's an in and out, so it's really treated as an expense out to our fire districts and our towns, so we have to get that caught up so that we don't violate any auditing policies.
So moved, we approve budget revisions as
second it.
presented.
Got a motion, got a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we got appointments. I think we can do A through D. And I will do the last one at the end. Do I have a motion for appointments of A through D?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Is there any further discussion?
Adam Stanley, our fire marshal, talked about the volunteerism in the fire department throughout the county. The volunteerism for people volunteering for these boards takes a lot of time commitment on their part, so I commend the citizens of Johnston County for being willing to step forward.
Absolutely. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the Hospital Authority. The Hospital Authority has concurred with the Board of Commissioners' nominations of Dr. Marilyn Pearson and David Mills for the 2 Hospital Authority positions. Pursuant to statutes, I, as chairman, reappoint Dr. Pearson and Mr. Mills to the Hospital Authority for 3-year terms. Next on the agenda is Delinquent Tax Collection Report. We're going to call on Tax Administrator Ms. Andrews.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Before you have the July collections report, which is our first report for the new fiscal year. As you can see, the levy for the county is still very strong, even after the significant reduction in the tax rate that y'all approved for this budget cycle. And kind of following up with Finance Director's comment a few minutes ago, if you'll look at the very bottom, as it relates to registered motor vehicles and the vehicle tax, you will see that for the first month of the fiscal year, we were up almost 19% over the same time period for last year. So again, motor vehicle taxes are still very strong for this county, as are many other things. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Andrews? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is manager reports and comments. I think County Manager Mr. Hester would like to talk with us.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Just wanted to update you on the Public Safety Center. We'll be planning to finance that and go through that process. It may be that we have some proceeds left over from the detention center that may result in us not having to borrow as much money as we think. We certainly do have to include furnishings and some contingencies and things of that nature, but we'll keep you posted on this as we go through this process. And we anticipate low rates like we've been getting on these types of things. That's all I have today.
Thank you. Anything from Mr. Hester? All right. Next on the agenda is board reports and comments. I do have an item before I get to mine. Is any comments or board reports from the commissioners?
Are we supposed to have our seal up there under that camera? In our county seal, shouldn't it be up there?
Well, I guess we can.
Check on that.
Yeah. I tell you what, Mr. Goblin, we got the clock straightened out this morning. Now we're getting there. And them engineers, I tell you, they don't miss anything. Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Yes, the item I have is cleaning up something from the last meeting. At our August 16 meeting, Commissioner Smith had requested to hold certain non-emergency agenda items over to allow commissioners more time to deliberate on the matters. The board took the request under advisement to discuss again at today's meeting. So would y'all in a position to discuss this? I think everybody remember his request. Would you like to hear it again?
I remember it. I could see merit in it, but I'd hate to be married to it on a mandatory basis, if that makes any sense. I think we ought to default easily to discussing it in detail and maybe taking it under advisement. But I don't know that we ought to be mandated on every item to that end. Do you follow me?
I agree. I don't think it's one shoe fits all when we make those determinations. Clearly we have the agenda package readily available, and any commissioner could pull it off or do whatever they like, but that's just my 2 cents worth.
I'll get a little bit of a different take. I think if there are things that we can make routine, that we don't need to put those and discuss, but I do think there are items, and I think it's fair to the public and for any applicant or whatever we're doing to have some process for them to know is we will listen to information at one meeting, and 2 weeks later we can vote on it. So I don't know that 2 weeks is going to make or break many things that we do. But I do think there is value to us having an opportunity to discuss openly amongst us and ask questions of staff before we make a final decision on something. We can again process it, and then at the second meeting, take a vote, ask more questions and clarifications. But I do see some value, but I think we need to define what those items are.
Could you handle those items individually and say, oh, okay, this particular item, when you make the motion to either approve or not approve?
Mr. Chairman, let me.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were through.
No, that's okay. I was going to finish up by saying, when you make the motion, you can either move for approval or move for a 2-week delay. Would that work?
So if I'm sitting the one out there having to have a question answered, I would like to know what the process is before I get to that point. So again, 2 weeks is not a big time. I'm glad we do have a second day of meetings in the month, but I really think that it allows us time to discuss things that I know in my case, sometimes I get to agenda items earlier than others, just on my work schedule. But I do think it provides us an opportunity to have discussion before we make a decision. And as an engineer, I may overthink a lot of things, but it does give some additional time to think through decisions.
This is, the way I look at this is a good governance rule. Some of us have a day job and notes at the bank we have to pay. So our time is important. The issue is, what do you have to prepare for? If it's a case-by-case basis, for good governance, you have to prepare for every issue if you're going to be the best commissioner you can be. But if you can come down here and have the issue presented to us, have a discussion about it, and then you can go do your homework and be prepared to vote on it at the next issue, I believe we'll do a better job as commissioners, make more effective use of our private time in our day job, not have to prepare things where we don't have the facts. That puts a burden on staff to say, well, how do we prepare commissioners? Some can meet with us, some can't meet with us. And to just put millions of dollars on the table to be spent without any discussion, in my opinion, is not good governance. And that's why I said if we could just have the matter put in front of us, discuss it, have 2 weeks to study it, and then vote on it at the next meeting. I don't see that there's any harm, with the understanding that if staff or the county manager says this matter is an emergency, we need an answer today, then we would deal with that.
So,
Mr. Wood?
Thank you. So if you're saying if there's one dissent on voting on an item, then it should be carried over. Is that how you determine the process?
Like said, it ought to be normal, customary practice that matters are brought in front of us that, other than routine matters, like a consent agenda or proclamations. But if it involves a major decision or a governance decision, we would have a chance to discuss it, then have 2 weeks to study it, and come back and hopefully give a more informed vote, subject to the staff being able to say, we need an answer on this today, then we would deal with that.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't understand how we're going to get clarity on what items what.
Well, what Mr. Chairman, if I might, what I'm concerned about is everything that Commissioner Smith says is true. We need to have good deliberation. And what Larry said earlier about making informed decisions as it applies to the COVID situation, the more data you got, But I think if we prepare ourselves and are uncomfortable with spending money without due deliberation, then we ought to put it off for 2 weeks. I just hate to put hard rules in place that slows down the process for our citizens. And if we've got a major item with millions of dollars, we ought to put it off for 2 weeks and discuss it. But again, I don't want hard rules in place that slows down the process of government. That's my concern.
Well, let me just say that your General Assembly does that. That's why they have different votes at different times, just so things like that can be done. And I think staff, if anything needs to be done, staff can say, we need an answer on this. We can deal with that. It's tough for some of us who are not retired to deal with the day-to-day things and to prepare to give good governance to this county. It's a big county. We're spending a lot of money. We're spending millions of dollars. We need to have a chance to deliberate. And I see no downside whatsoever to having 2 weeks to study an issue.
Commissioner Harris?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a huge issue with the way things operate. I typically get the agenda well in advance. I sit down at night and I go through it, and if I have questions, I may call Mr. Hester to get clarification or whatever about an item on the agenda. So I don't have a big issue with that. I also know that we reserve the right at any time to table an issue independently if something comes up at a meeting. I don't have a problem with going to that mode of operation either one. I guess I don't have a big discrepancy either way. The only thing I don't want to do is to unnecessarily delay action for our citizens. I think government has enough hoops to jump through without us making it even longer and more drawn out for them. I think we need to push through these things as quickly as we can and still provide prudent governance.
Mr. Smith, I think you got Mr. Harris and Mr. Godwin on slowing down government. If you
I don't see how this slows down government. I challenge, there's no basis in fact for that belief. There's no issue that we have that 2 weeks makes any difference. And what I'm suggesting is if the county manager thinks it does, he could say so and then we would deal with it.
But that would violate a rule we put in place that citizens might have to depend on. That's what my concern is.
Okay, Mr. Gomer's really not for it. Mr. Wood?
You got a motion on the floor, or what are you looking at?
This will call a motion or consensus.
If you're going to make a policy decision, then you need to have a motion and that sort of thing. I guess, and you didn't ask for my opinion, I'd be happy to give it to you if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, please. I think the board would like to hear your opinion.
With regards to some of these things, and we certainly understand the concern about having time to deliberate and those sorts of things. One thing, and I don't want to push the decision down the road, but one thing that I would like to suggest, if it's okay with you, is to let staff come up with maybe some ideas that you could consider. One thing that I had in mind when Mr. Smith first brought this up to the board, once I listened, was perhaps things that for example, decisions on contracts that are in the formal bidding range. Certainly, those typically have already been appropriated in the budget, but like what we did today with the Piedmont natural gas. Now, we've talked about that publicly for some months, but those are the kinds of things perhaps that the board might want to consider. Now, certainly from public utilities perspective, sometimes there are funding deadlines that we have to meet, and I think that might be what Mr. Smith is referring to if it's an emergency. But those are some of the things that came in mind when we were thinking about this. Certainly, for example, ordinance changes that require public hearing, and traditionally we have in many cases had the public hearing at one point and then had the vote at another time. But those were the kinds of things that I was sort of thinking about as this discussion happened last meeting, and perhaps maybe give your administration team, if this is what you'd like to think about a little bit more, give your administration team the opportunity to maybe put some bullet points before you that you could consider, and perhaps make the decision a little bit easier moving forward. But that again is my thought, and certainly I defer to the board and however you'd like to approach this.
Unless someone's prepared to make a motion on what we just discussed, I suggest that we accept that request. Is that good with the board?
It's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Public hearings is, that's one thing in the past we should be putting off after a public hearing, making that decision.
Thank you, Counselor. You got some direction, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other board reports, comments? If not, is there a need for a closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board go into closed session for purposes of consulting with attorney employed by the board to serve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to CS 143-318-11A3 to discuss matters related to expansion of industry and other business in the area pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A4, dealing with the price and terms of the acquisition of real property, and NCGS 143-318-11A5, dealing with personnel matters.
Second. Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? We're now in closed session.